Good evening, everybody. Daniel Sherman here. I'm sitting on a porch on Main Street. There's cars going by, so hopefully that won't interrupt the video too much. But wanted to do a follow-up video on my prior estate video with wills. Kentucky has inheritance tax and the federal government has estate tax, and I want to talk a little bit about that because that can be important when you're doing some estate planning, especially as to who you're going to leave the property to and how you're going to leave it, because I've had this issue come up when unfortunately, I probated some estates and the clients weren't advised very well by other attorneys, or did the wills on their own and didn't really take into consideration some inheritance tax. As far as the estate tax is concerned, it's an estate and gift tax. It's in federal. If you are an individual, it's a $15 million exemption. So, I mean, as long as your estate, the time of your death, is less than $15 million, you don't have to pay any estate tax. And $30 million if you're married. And there's some other exemptions for estate tax. There's, like farm exemptions and things like that. And there's, exemptions where you can run them through trusts, so you don't really have to worry about estate tax. Rarely do I recommend trusts for my clients because they just, they're rarely needed because just because the amount of the exemption. And you may or may not know this, but there's also a gift tax. And the whole point of the gift tax is, if you're on your deathbed and you're 10 minutes away from dying, you say, hey, I'll give all my property to this person, then it doesn't pass through your estate. So it's kind of a way to, really prevent that, to keep track of gifts and everything like that. And there's, yearly exemptions to individuals. I think it's around $15,000. You can give to an individual, not have to report it. Anything over that, you do have to report it, but you still get your $15 million exemption, so you're still not taxed unless you give gifts to private individuals. We're not counting nonprofits that exceed the $15 million exemption. So I in 21 years, I've never had to file an estate tax return. I know how to do them because I did them in law school, but I've never had to file one as a private attorney. But what does affect people a lot more in Kentucky is inheritance tax. And inheritance tax is taxes on estates when it passes to certain people. Now, there are exemptions. For instance, if you give your estate to your wife, there's no inheritance tax. To your son, there's no inheritance tax. To your parents, no inheritance tax. Brother, sister, all the way down to grandchildren and I think sibling and half sibling. There's no taxes on that, so you can leave them, $1 million, and there's no inheritance taxes. Where it really comes in is when they're not those relatives. So we're talking like a niece, a nephew, a great grandchild. I've had that come up. An uncle, an aunt, those are second exemption. So what they get is they get $1,000 exemption, and then they're taxed, I think, on the first 10,000, like 4.5%, and then above that, above the 10,000, they're taxed at it goes all the way up to 16%. So I mean, that can really ding you. If you're giving somebody $1 million, you just lost, $155,000. So it's not something that you really want to, you really do need to avoid. And I tell, when people do wills, I had some that are, hey, I want to give my house to my niece. I love her. She's the only one there for me. Well, if you give her the house, it's taxed at the day you die. So whatever the value of the house was the day you died, that's what the inheritance tax is. So you may have bought it for $15,000. You die and it's worth $500,000. She's going to have to sell it. because there's probably no way, she's going to be paying that kind of inheritance tax. So there are easy ways to get around that, and that's kind of what I want to get into a little bit. Then if they're not those second individuals, third individuals, the tax rate for the first $10,000, I think, is 6%. You get a $500 exemption, and then like 16% after that. So, I mean, if you give it to a friend, a buddy, a third cousin, second, something like that, then they're just not, they're paying a lot. So there's a few ways around that. Just give them the money. Or what you could do is, as far as a house, you can leave it in survivorship to them, and it passes automatically, so it doesn't pass through. It doesn't pass through your estate, so you don't have to worry about that. You can buy whole life insurance policies and use it that way. That way, it won't go through an estate. Put them on a bank account. Put them as a joint owner or as a survivorship. That won't go through probate. And inheritance taxes only applies to people when there's assets that are probated. I'll give you an example. I don't know if she follows me or not, but I had a client. An attorney did a will for her. She was the great-granddaughter of somebody who had not a huge estate, but it was a couple $100,000 when you count the house and some of the other assets. And she could have just given her the house and then named her as a survivor on the bank account, and she didn't. And so she ended up paying like a lot in estate tax. And here's the other thing, or inheritance tax. Here's the other thing with inheritance taxes. You got to pay it within 9 months after they die. And part of the problem is you may not wrap up the estate. There may be, outstanding claims. You may, wait 6 months to file it. Then you got to wait 6 months to finalize it to get your money. And so, you may be paying late penalties and interest on that as well. So, inheritance tax in Kentucky can really bite you in the butt if you don't know what you're doing. So, most attorneys know this. You don't have to go to an estate planning expert. Some of these things are just really, common sense. But do be aware that if you give property in your will to, nieces, nephews, great-grandchildren, aunts, uncles, they're going to be subject to inheritance taxes, and they can get quite substantial. So just, if you're going to do that, I suggest, you do other ways. You still do a will, but there are other ways to get the bigger assets in their hands and not have it pass through probate. What I said earlier is, always do a will, but, a good estate there's really nothing to probate other than debt. So hope this helps you all out when you all were, doing wills or planning your estate, that these are some of the things. And hopefully, if you go see an attorney, they'll explain this to you. I had one the other day, came in, and I said, no, we're not putting this person in the will. Or you can put them in the will, but you're transferring that property to them. You're putting them on the bank account. We're not. You're not doing this. They're going to be eaten up by the inheritance tax. So just watch out for it, guys, when you do it. Make sure if you go to an attorney, and my Northern Kentucky friends that follow me, I'm probably not going to be doing your will unless you want to drive to Muhlenberg County. But when you go to an attorney, make sure if you're going to leave to a niece, nephew, great-grandchild, something like that, or a friend, just, get the inheritance tax right, and you won't have to worry about it. And those that you love can enjoy their inheritance and not have to worry about, paying it to the government. So just wanted to let you all know that. That was one, I think, a very important thing I hadn't discussed, and I did want to discuss it. So y'all have a good night, and have any questions or comments, leave it down below. Y'all have my phone number. Y'all have a good night. Talk to you tomorrow.